This is an emergency broadcast transmission. This is not a test. Please remain calm.
There were hints in the months before the November election that something was off, that something was going on in this one that was different. It all seemed, though, almost too big to grasp at the time, in the middle of what was already this incredibly interesting campaign, this incredibly politically volatile campaign. But in the middle of all that, there was also this external foreign dynamic at work. Beginning with the news last summer that the email servers of the Democratic Party headquarters had been hacked by Russian hackers. Then there was the news that voter registration systems in at least 2 states, or maybe 10 states, or maybe 20 states, had been probed or breached to some level by, again, hackers. By October, a month before the election, the United States intelligence agencies come out and said that while they couldn't agree on whether it was definitely the Russians behind those voter registration system hacks, they said they were confident that the Russians, the Russian government, had definitely directed the hacking of the DNC and other American political organizations in order to, quote, interfere with the U.S. election process. So the bizarre story, out of all the weird stuff that has ever happened in American elections, this story, our generation's story of the bizarre Russian hacking of our election, that story was at least starting to emerge in the weeks before the election. But at the same time, you know, as usual, as normal, there was this super contentious, fascinating presidential campaign going on. And that was very engrossing at the time.
A bombshell.
Today is a turning point. Today was historically bad for President Trump.
Today was a turning point.
A turning point.
We're at a turning point here.
The beginning of the end for the Trump presidency.
We have another bombshell.
Mike Pence might have to assume the office of the presidency.
Rumblings of the word impeachment.
Breaking news.
Another bombshell out of the White House.
I believe this is the beginning of the end.
I do too.
It's really the beginning of the end.
He may be feeling the walls closing in on him.
All the walls closing in on him.
The walls closing in on him.
Breaking news, a new bombshell.
One astrologer says this means the beginning of the end for President Donald Trump.
Trump will resign.
Trump is going to resign.
Is this the tipping point? I know we've said it over and over.
You think this is a tipping point?
And over and over.
This is a tipping point.
And over and over.
Breaking news, President Trump off the rails.
This is the beginning of the end today.
The beginning of the end.
Breaking news tonight, new bombshell.
This is the beginning of the end.
The beginning of the end.
The walls are closing in.
The walls closing.
Russia, Vladimir Putin, Russia hates Russia, Putin, Russia, Moscow, Russia, Russian, pro-Russian, Russia, the Russians, Russian, Moscow, Russia, Putin, Russia against us, the Russians rush against the U.S. And it was not until after the election that the extent of the Russian involvement in our presidential election really came to light.
Democrats and Republicans are waking up to a brand new political reality after Robert Mueller and his team spent nearly 2 years digging through the evidence, issuing more than 2,800 subpoenas, executing nearly 500 search warrants, and interviewing approximately 500 witnesses.
I'm sorry, we seem to be having some technical difficulties.
Good evening. We are anonymous. We have taken control of this broadcast. Do not be alarmed. We are anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We are Legion. Expect us. Please stand by.
The results are in. And take a look at the headlines from the Washington Post to the New York Post. They're what the president wanted. The very real caveats, notably the controversy and questions arising from the special counsel punting on obstruction, are this morning adding fuel to calls for the Mueller report to be released in its entirety. We don't even know right now how long that report is. As of this morning, it is still under wraps, but we have Attorney General's 4-page summary sent to Congress on Sunday, just about 48 hours after Barr first received Mueller's findings. On the issue of collusion, Barr says the special counsel did not find that the Trump campaign or anyone associated with it conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in these efforts, despite multiple offers from Russian-affiliated individuals to assist the Trump campaign.
It was just announced there was no collusion with Russia, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction and none whatsoever. And it was a complete and total exoneration. There was no collusion with Russia. There was no collusion with Russia.
You are fake news.
Sir, I think I'm going to have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. No, it's fine.
This is the end of this emergency broadcast.